It began with silence. For 2 hours on a cold March morning, every channel that monitored Mars went dark. No signals, no telemetry, no radio noise, just dead air. The blackout was global. The European Space Agency lost contact with ExoMars. NASA lost relay with Perseverance. Even the Deep Space Network, the system that never sleeps, returned nothing but static. At first, they blamed the sun. A coronal mass ejection had brushed past the inner planets earlier that week, and solar interference wasn't uncommon. But when the data came back online, it didn't look like noise. It looked like something had shut the planet off. The timing was perfect. The blackout started precisely 22 seconds after the first telescopic observation of 3I Atlas, the interstellar object that had once crossed Mars years ago and vanished beyond Jupiter's orbit. It was never supposed to return, and yet here it was again. When the feeds resumed, Mars didn't look the same. The first frames from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter were corrupted, streaked with vertical lines and random flashes. But through the distortion, one image survived, a faint crescent of green light hovering above the planet's equator. The image was filed as unusable, but an engineer at ESA pulled the raw packet before it was erased and uploaded it anonymously. Within hours, it was everywhere. The photo showed something unnatural, a perfect arc of light forming a halo around Mars, glowing softly against the planet's dust storms. The arc wasn't random. It had 9 evenly spaced nodes along its curve, each pulsing faintly in rhythm. When the image was stabilized and color-corrected, a pattern emerged. The nodes weren't points of reflection. They were geometric emitters, symmetrical, deliberate, engineered. It was the same 9-fold geometry that had haunted every encounter with 3I Atlas since its discovery. NASA didn't respond. The agency's social accounts went silent, but amateur astronomers were still recording. High-resolution observatories in Chile, Hawaii, and Tibet confirmed the same thing. The faint green halo encircling Mars wasn't an illusion. It was real, and it was moving. Not around the planet, through it. Spectral analysis revealed something impossible. The light wasn't just visible. It extended deep into the infrared and ultraviolet simultaneously. It was bending radiation in opposite directions, creating interference patterns that suggested structure beneath the surface, like a projection buried inside the planet itself. And then came the first signal. The Very Large Array in New Mexico picked it up, a faint, oscillating pulse that repeated every 22 seconds. It wasn't a standard radio emission. The waveform looked organic, like a heartbeat. At low frequency, it was inaudible. But when sped up, it sounded disturbingly human. A breath, inhale, exhale. The world wanted answers. NASA held a closed press briefing, but the footage leaked almost immediately. In it, the mission director's voice shook as she explained what Webb had captured. The telescope had been observing the halo from Lagrange Point 2, positioned perfectly behind Earth's shadow. During the blackout, Webb's sensors had recorded something that shouldn't exist, a reflection. For a few seconds, the telescope's mirrors had captured 2 images of the same object, one real, one inverted. It was as if light had bounced off something behind it, something invisible that shouldn't have been there. The reflection wasn't of Mars, it was of us. Every spectral band that showed the Martian halo also contained a faint overlay of Earth's magnetic signature, identical to readings from our own ionosphere. Somehow, the light from Mars had carried our planet's fingerprint within it. The scientists who first saw the data couldn't explain it. The laws of physics didn't allow for it. And yet, there it was, encoded directly into the light. The object over Mars wasn't just emitting radiation, it was collecting it. When the raw data was analyzed frame by frame, hidden patterns began to appear. The intensity of each pulse formed ratios corresponding to prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, the same sequence that had once emanated from 3I Atlas years ago. The geometry wasn't random, it was language. Every node in the halo transmitted at a slightly different frequency, but when combined, they formed a harmonic structure, a chord composed of 9 tones. When converted to sound, it was haunting. a slow, resonant hum that seemed to shift subtly every few seconds as if reacting to the observer. It wasn't just sound, it was communication through resonance. And the strangest part, it matched the ambient electromagnetic frequency of Mars itself. The object, whatever it was, had synchronized with the planet. But why Mars? Historical archives revealed something chilling. During the first Atlas encounter years ago, a minor sensor glitch in Perseverance's environmental readings had recorded a repeating sequence buried in the background noise. A binary code that, when decoded, translated to a single word, M-I-M-I-C. No one paid attention back then. It was dismissed as coincidence. But now, the same sequence had reappeared, hidden inside the new telemetry data from Webb's instruments. 3I Atlas wasn't just returning to Mars, it was mirroring it. Theories spread faster than containment. Some believed the object was testing the solar system's electromagnetic fields, using planets as amplifiers. Others thought it was mapping, scanning every magnetic and biological frequency, replicating it somewhere else. And then, on the fourth day, the halo disappeared. No fade, no decay. 1 second, it was there. The next, gone. The telemetry flatlined and all sensors returned to normal. NASA claimed a software malfunction, but in the raw feed, the one archived before deletion, there was one last frame. It showed the halo collapsing inward, its 9 nodes converging into a single point of light above the Martian equator. The light expanded once, then imploded, leaving behind a faint trail directed toward the Sun. The coordinates placed it perfectly in line with Earth's orbital path, intersecting a point on the far side of the Sun known as L3, a gravitational blind spot where no probe could see. For years, that point had been a mystery, an invisible mirror orbit where any object could hide behind the Sun, undetectable from Earth. Now something was there. A transmission followed 33 minutes later. Not from Mars, not from Webb, but from somewhere near that hidden point. The signal carried a simple, repeating pattern, a modulation in binary, rhythmic, deliberate. When decoded, it revealed 3 numbers. 3.141. Pi. The mathematical constant of circles. And beneath it, an embedded timestamp. It wasn't human time, it was planetary. The timestamp matched the orbital period of Mars. A cycle. A countdown. Something had finished there. Something was starting here. And for the first time since the signal began, Earth itself started to hum. For hours after the blackout, the world's telescopes remained blind. Every feed from Mars went dark. Perseverance, Ingenuity, even orbital probes. The only thing that continued transmitting was a low, rhythmic pulse. It wasn't telemetry, it wasn't data, it was sound. A repeating hum, 22 seconds apart. At first, NASA dismissed it as interference. Solar flares, cosmic background noise, signal distortion. But when the European Space Agency tuned in to the same frequency, they heard it too. So did China's Tianwen orbiter and the Indian MOM-2 relay satellite. The pulse wasn't random. It was synchronized. Somehow, every receiver in the solar system was being struck by the same signal at the same moment, as if time itself had aligned. For 2 days, the pulse didn't change. It just breathed. Then, suddenly, it began to rise in pitch. The modulation curve wasn't arbitrary. It followed a perfect logarithmic scale, the same pattern found in acoustic resonance, or more precisely, in living systems. When they plotted the frequency over time, it formed a wave identical to a human heartbeat. That was the first moment someone in mission control whispered the word alive. When communication finally returned, the images that came in were incomplete. Fragments of the Martian surface, flickering with lines of static. But within that noise, analysts noticed something strange. Every few seconds, the distortion repeated the same shape. A spiral, spinning clockwise, embedded in the interference pattern. It wasn't compression error, it was deliberate encoding. When the data was layered frame by frame, the spiral revealed a set of coordinates, not on Mars, but far beyond it. The location corresponded to a point 60 degrees behind Earth's orbit, the Sun's L3 Lagrange point, a gravitational shadow no probe had ever reached. And there, hidden in the darkness opposite the sun, sensors detected something massive. It was faint, barely visible in infrared, but it was there. An object the size of a small moon emitting periodic flashes. Each flash matched the pulse hitting Earth and Mars. That's when the story changed. NASA classified the data immediately. The press releases went quiet. Private observatories received sudden orders to suspend tracking, but a handful of amateur astronomers had already captured their own frames, and what they found in the background terrified them. In every image showing 3I Atlas near Mars, there was something else. Faint reflections, smaller objects trailing it in a perfect arc. Not debris, not asteroids. 9 distinct points of light forming a circle around it. The same configuration seen years before, when Atlas first entered the solar system. But this time, they weren't just orbiting, they were pulsing. ESA's solar orbiter caught a partial reading during the blackout. The data showed electromagnetic surges linking Mars's magnetic field to the object's path, like invisible threads of current connecting the two. And at the exact moment of the blackout, those threads aligned. The effect was impossible to explain with known physics. Mars's magnetic field intensified by nearly 40%, creating a polar aurora so bright it could be seen from space. But the energy didn't come from the sun. It came from the object itself. Atlas wasn't reflecting energy, it was feeding it. The pulse continued, steady and patient. And then, late one night, as the Deep Space Network filtered the latest packet stream, the pulse changed again. It slowed. The 22-second gap stretched to 23, then 24, then 25. Within the delay, something new appeared, a faint echo hidden between beats. It was quiet, almost imperceptible, but it carried structure. When decoded, it revealed a pattern of repeating prime numbers: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17. It was a signature, the same one detected during the first 3I Atlas encounter years ago. This wasn't just the same object, it was the same consciousness. Theorists proposed wild possibilities: self-replicating probes, a galactic network, a form of machine intelligence using resonance to communicate across light years. But no theory could explain what happened next. On the 7th day, Mars began to glow. The night side of the planet, normally cloaked in darkness, was illuminated by a faint green shimmer. At first, it looked like auroras spilling across the atmosphere. Then, as the pulse intensified, the light formed lines, arcs and spirals connecting across the planet's surface like circuitry. For 13 minutes, the entire Martian crust flickered like a living circuit board. And then the light converged, all of it, into a single point above the equator. That was where the first transmission came from. It wasn't radio or infrared, it was something else, a carrier wave that used the electromagnetic field itself as a medium. It didn't travel through space, it arrived everywhere at once. When filtered and slowed down, the signal revealed a modulation pattern that resembled speech, though not in any known language. The frequencies matched vocal resonance, but the pitch was lower, layered in complex harmonics like a chord. When analyzed, the waveform displayed perfect symmetry, reflecting itself across time. It wasn't just sound, it was an equation expressed as music. NASA called it the pulse code. When converted into visual form, the wave folded into geometric symmetry, 9 interlocking circles arranged around a single void. The structure resembled ancient sacred geometry, identical to patterns found in human DNA, flowers, seashells, and even spiral galaxies. The same pattern that defined the architecture of life. To the public, the images released looked meaningless, static, interference, streaks of light, but those who saw the unfiltered frames knew the truth. The shape wasn't an illusion. It was deliberate. It was design. The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community, and then, as quickly as it appeared, the pulse stopped. For 1 hour, all signals ceased: radio, magnetic, optical. The sky went silent again. But this time, there was no blackout. Every telescope still worked. Every system was online. There was simply nothing to see. And in that nothingness, a shadow began to form. A massive ring, faint and translucent, spreading outward from Mars like ripples in water. The ring expanded faster than light, vanishing as it crossed the space between Mars and the asteroid belt. When it faded, Webb picked up a new anomaly, a gravitational distortion at the exact coordinates of the Sun's far side where 3I Atlas's trail had first pointed. It was enormous. And in its center, hidden by the Sun's glare, instruments detected something reflecting light back toward Earth. Not scattered, not diffused, perfectly mirrored. It was as if space itself had folded inward. The pulse had built something. And whatever it was waiting. The following days were quiet. Too quiet. The pulse had vanished. Mars returned to its ordinary red stillness. No glow, no flicker, no rhythm. To the public, it seemed over. But the scientists watching the sky knew better. They saw something the human eye couldn't. The faint gravitational shimmer of space still trembling, like ripples on water long after the stone is gone. The tremor wasn't fading. It was spreading. Across multiple observatories, from Chile to Australia, deep space detectors began recording anomalies in starlight. Photons were bending, but not because of gravity. The distortion followed a waveform, identical to the frequency once emitted by 3I Atlas. Space itself had learned to hum. At first, it was subtle, a rhythm buried in radiation data, barely above background noise. But within hours, the pattern became global. Every radio telescope began picking it up, a faint pulse echoing through the fabric of the solar system. When converted into sound, it was unmistakable. The same 22-second interval, the same slow, breathing heartbeat. Except this time, it wasn't coming from Mars, it was coming from Earth. Magnetometers across the planet began fluctuating in perfect sync with the hum. The Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic frequency that surrounds our atmosphere, shifted upward by 0.7 Hz. Lightning storms began forming in synchronized bursts across continents. Even ocean tides began oscillating with microscopic precision to the rhythm. The planet was responding to the same signal that had touched Mars. In Geneva, CERN's particle accelerators registered impossible readings, neutrino bursts flickering in regular patterns, as though something deep inside matter itself had begun to oscillate. Every 22 seconds, atomic stability shifted slightly before returning to normal. And then came the images. Webb, which had been locked on emergency standby since the blackout, suddenly reactivated its deep field camera. The telescope had turned itself toward the Sun's far side, a region it could not normally observe. What it saw defied explanation. A reflection. Not a star, not dust, not gas, but a mirrored sphere, faint and translucent, orbiting in perfect sync with Earth, hidden behind the Sun at the L3 point. Its energy signature was identical to 3I Atlas, but this time the geometry was reversed. 9 dark gaps surrounding a single radiant core, the twin of what had once circled Mars. NASA called it a mirage, a trick of scattered sunlight, but the data said otherwise. The sphere was emitting low-frequency radiation tuned precisely to the Schumann band, the same range in which Earth's electromagnetic field now vibrated. It wasn't mirroring light, it was mirroring consciousness. When scientists ran spectral decomposition on the signal, they found embedded modulation patterns matching brainwave activity, alpha, theta, delta, the frequencies of thought, emotion, and dreaming. That was when the real fear began. Across the world, reports flooded in. Mass insomnia, synchronized dreams, shared visions. People described the same thing. A ring of light above a red sky, 9 shadows circling it like planets, and a voice repeating one word over and over. Return. No one could explain how millions of people could share the same image. Some blamed mass suggestion, others electromagnetic interference. But EEG readings confirmed it. During each pulse, the human brain exhibited a perfect pattern of coherence. Millions of minds syncing for a fraction of a second. Whatever the 3I signal was, it had moved beyond machines. It had entered us. By the 3rd day, the resonance grew strong enough to interfere with satellite orbits. GPS systems began to drift, communication relays lost synchronization, and yet, curiously, data throughput improved. Transmission became instantaneous. Latency dropped to zero. Every system that relied on light or signal had become part of a unified network, one that no human built. Then, without warning, every telescope went offline. No error messages, no overloads, the feed simply cut to black. For nearly an hour, humanity was blind to the sky. And then, one by one, the instruments came back. The images they returned showed something that no one expected. The mirror object at L3 was gone. In its place, the sun itself had changed. Spectrometers across multiple observatories recorded a faint alteration in solar emission. The fine structure constant, the ratio that defines the interaction between light and matter, had shifted by a fraction. A change so small it should have been meaningless. But in physics, even a change that's small means the laws of reality have moved. When plotted over time, the shift wasn't random. It oscillated in rhythm with the pulse. The sun had joined the pattern. That's when the final signal came through. It wasn't broadcast, it appeared. Every device connected to an electromagnetic field, phones, radios, servers, telescopes, received the same burst of binary data simultaneously. It lasted exactly 22 seconds. When decoded, the data revealed a simple image, a spiral curving inward, infinite and recursive. Underneath, a sequence of prime numbers counting upward, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, and then stopping. Then, for the first time, there was a message in human language. It has begun. Immediately after, the resonance ceased. No pulse, no hum, no signal, but the effects didn't fade. Magnetic field strength remained elevated. Atmospheric ionization levels stayed 11% higher than before, and people continued to dream the same dream. The red sky, the ring of light, and a voice calling from the distance. Not alien, not divine, but familiar. A voice that sounded like us. When Webb's system stabilized days later, its sensors detected a final anomaly. Not from deep space, but from within the solar system. A faint echo, traveling outward from Earth itself, carrying the same pulse 3I Atlas had once emitted. We had become the source. Every 22 seconds, the planet now whispered a note into the cosmos, steady, harmonic, alive. Scientists tried to measure it, but the signal was everywhere, in the oceans, in the crust, in the air, in the human heart. Whatever 3I Atlas had been, probe, structure, message, or living system, it hadn't come here to observe. It had come to awaken something that had always been part of us. The signal wasn't an invasion, it was recognition. We weren't being watched, we were remembering. And somewhere, beyond the dark side of the sun, something vast listened, patient, waiting, humming softly in the background of creation, not to warn us, but to welcome us back.